Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight and happy 2021. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, we're going to see a lot. We're going to see a lot this year, Judith.
And what better way to kick off the year with Masaki Miyagawa? His website is akaida.com and his YouTube channel is Akaida TV. Everything will be linked below as usual. So Masaki, happy to see you. I'm happy that you are alive and kicking.
Yeah,
And,
we're here. I always had to rearrange some things because had everything pulled apart. All the cords were out for New Year's, but we got it set up. We got a good sound, ready to rock. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was just looking at some headlines today. Actually, today. I'm not saying they are all from today, but I had a feeling the weirdness is certainly getting stronger.
That's a sign, right? People arguing, are we in the Aquarian age? Just take a look at your door when you see the furries jogging around the block and people like naked just like running. It's getting weird out there. There was one of the things that kind of flew under the radar. There were quite a few UFO sightings last year. There was a noticeable uptick. And so whether that's real, whether it's a projection, whatever, it was a noteworthy trend. Even the Vatican nativity scene, very odd, right? That's a signifier that we're definitely moving into those Aquarian waters, right?
Yeah.
The air sign. Yeah.
So I will read some of the headlines.
Sure.
The first one is blue UFO lights up sky over Hawaii.
I saw that one, yeah.
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 Okay. Another one, Seattle bill could legalize crime for those in poverty or with behavioral issues.
Yep. Well, out here in California, not in Los Angeles, I don't think it's Los Angeles County. I think it's Orange County, which is right next to Los Angeles County. They wanted to release 50% of the jail population. So that's not prison, but it's the jails where they hold people for a short time or before you go to court. And the sheriff said no. We're not going to let these people out on the streets, At least we can hold them as long as we can hold them. But it's basically Operation Chaos,
Yeah.
It's not for the benefit of these prisoners or the jail population. It's to increase the contradictions and tensions,
Yeah. So doctors are discovering that for male patients, the penis offers the fastest release of the vaccine throughout the body, based on findings from a University of California.
That doesn't make sense because I thought we were supposed to chop our balls off, right? They said no testicles, take that soy shots, and it cures you of all coronavirus.
Oh.
That was a real article. I think you remember. They were like, women seem to have a lower rate of coronavirus, so maybe we should just emasculate the men, and then we're all fine, right? They were literally said that. I think they were going to test giving estrogen shots to men as a cure for coronavirus,
Yeah, but so the plastic bottles didn't work?
I don't know. I think maybe a diet of soy. Maybe that's the answer, Judith. We'll have that 99% estrogen content in the soy milk. Yeah. So
another one is most alien societies, that is, are probably dead.
Right. That's why they have the D-wave burrowing portals to other dimensions, right?
Yeah. And here is one that you will love. COVID bill, that is the one in the United States, includes 180-day countdown for Pentagon to make UFO disclosures.
That's significant because that's part of the their disclosure, right? I think that's all in play from the nativity scene at the Vatican that looked very
Oh, yeah.
odd. I mean, that could have been straight out of some Nomo nativity scene, right? The African Nomo, the Dogon. It looked very odd. So that's one of their what the ace card they want to pull. I mean, if you look at the reaction of the public to this COVID situation, which has like a sub 1% death rate, what do you think is going to happen if they see ships in the sky? The people are going to fall to their knees and, just half the population, For us, we'll probably look at that and go, well, that's interesting, but I ain't getting on no ship.
No. Of course.
Oh, space brothers. Oh, they're here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the space brothers will all look like Mark Zuckerberg and like Fauci and.
You know what? I thought the last couple of days, because now it's coming to my mind because you mentioned this, I thought about this entire COVID situation and I thought it feels like an intelligence test and most are failing it.
Well, you know what? I was mentioning before we were on air, we do seem to be entering the age of Aquarius, right? We had all those, and there's debate. Did we start in 2012? Some people think that, like if you're into Vedic or sidereal astrology, they say we started the Aquarian age, in World War II, which that's what a lot of the Nazi thinking was, that they were preparing for the rise of the Ubermen, right? But there's pretty much no doubt that 2020, we did a whole show, right? We were talking about in the numerology, that's 4, which is Aquarian energy in the numerology. So that was definitely, okay, we're entering some kind of new phase. Then you had this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the 21st, right? With the stars, they look like the star of Bethlehem. And you have to know the as above, so below, this is a construct. So it's almost like a program. That's like, that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happens every 800 years. But when does it happen on the solstice, the winter solstice? Only for baby Jesus, right, Judith? So it's undeniable. We're in a new phase. But that whole archetype of Aquarius, the controllers are rubbing their hands because they know that it's a subtle level of technological control that will increase. But I think what their ego will not allow is the understanding that Aquarius is chaos. Nobody controls chaos, so you could have the finest made plans, and by nature, Aquarius is the wild card. Now, there will be a lot of people that just submit and become assimilated, but guess what? Chaos is chaos. You could see that with the whole story of Trump, right? That opened the door, but look what's happening to the U.S., right? Chaos elected Trump with the 4chan movement, the internet, the memes, Pepe the Frog, right? But whether Trump knows it or not, he is key to the implosion of the U.S., right? So it's like once you open that door, chaos has no master. That's what we were saying, right? Chaos has no master. So, but in a way, the weirdos, the freaks, the nudists, the furry people, the aliens, the ETs, this is the time when the fringe moves to the center. And I think that actually includes some of us. I'm not running naked in the streets as far as anybody else knows. But I do have the Doge here, right? So yeah, Dogecoin actually had a big pump today. So I was thinking about that this morning, Dogecoin, the cryptocurrency, and it's kind of weird, right? Like, why can't you just be like Bitcoin? Why does it have to have a Shiba Inu dog on it? Well, guess what, Judith? Weird will excel going into the future. So whether we like it or not, the Aquarian age favors novelty. But you could say to the extreme, people would say that's effing weird. But that's what Aquarius likes. So yeah.
You know what? I totally forgot. I wanted to start with a little bit of housekeeping.
Sure.
For the audience. So I will just push it in here,
Sure.
and then we return. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
So I have given up on BitChute. The experience is too weird. The channel is not deleted. It is still there, but I'm no longer uploading anything. So what I did, I have another channel on Odyssey, that is the video platform from library. And there they have synced my YouTube channel because I have the second strike now.
Oh.
And meaning, you know, once YouTube decides to pull the plug, then at least everything that I did is not just gone. It's safe on Odyssey. And actually, I did a ton of videos. They are available so far on brand new YouTube. I have some issues with them as well because I cannot upload my interviews. They are too long. I could for a while, and now I cannot. And I contacted the staff now 3 times, but nobody is replying. So in case that cannot be solved, that problem, and YouTube shuts me down, then I will definitely abandon brand new YouTube as well. And then you can find me on Odyssey. And that is, and I will put all the links below. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have done like 20, 30 videos that nobody has seen on YouTube.
Wow. Well, you know, this is the thing too, is I mean, we know these trends, right? They've been going, now it's kind of coming to a fork in the road. Okay, now what are we going to do? But one of my predictions, I put out a forecast for this year, 2021, and it's going to be a year of juggling. So even if we find an alternative, we better have some more alternatives backed up, because I think you could call it an instability, but it's just the energies this year. It's I think there's going to be, you could call it, the good side is rapid development, because nothing's going to be fixed this year. Everything's going to be in the air. But that also means for the controllers, because, you know, the thing is, I think they really had to push everything at a certain point. They were like, okay, or let's just say, it's unlikely, but let's just say their lab created, you know, virus got out by accident. Then once it's out, okay, we got to, everybody in the power structure, okay, let's throw everything out there. It's not quite working, you know. I think a lot of people are doomers, and they're saying like how bad it is, and it will get worse, dude. We haven't even seen the worst part yet. I think it's coming in a couple of years. But for, you got to think, they have all the money in the world. They have extreme, not mental intelligence, but, you know, like informational intelligence. They're working with occult forces, and this is the best you could do. You guys are losing. If you're watching Judith Quoba's Night Flight, I'm telling you guys, better figure something out, because not looking good for you archons. It's you know, they'll get a lot of what they want, but this is the best you could do. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As the opposition, I have to say, I'm not really respecting where you're coming from. You guys should have. You guys had thousands of years to put this together. This is the best you could do. Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree. I mean, for the most part, I mean, okay, the majorities are buying into it. But as I said, to me, it's an intelligence test. And but it is not working for everybody.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if at some level there's some kind of AI that's consulting for the powers that be, because they're really not that smart.
Mm,
They've always been in contact with interdimensional advisors, and look how degenerated. Because you had your Kissingers and your Brzezinskis, right? But they're
mm,
all dying off, and the younger generations, they're nowhere near these chessboard players, right? So why wouldn't they be consulting with an AI or something? And there is something to the illogical schizophrenic human being, that while you can predict many moves, we are crazy, and you cannot control crazy. I remember one time Jordan Maxwell was saying, how you have a flock of birds in the sky, and
mm,
all of a sudden they just turn and they just go in another. What is that? There's just things that, and I think the other thing is these Dark Lords, they don't realize that they're just players on the game board also. Like, you guys are just playing a role.
mm,
So they think like we're in control of everything. It's like, no, you're living inside the fishbowl with us.
mm.
So, as long as we play our role
Yeah.
the right way, then I don't think there's going to be any. I really feel, Judith, and I'm not a BSing, that I feel that many of us, our main opponent is ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
we can screw ourselves over, but as far as having to deal with these other things, like, here in LA, if I want to go into a certain store, I have to put the mask on, but that's just a costume
Mm.
for me.
Yeah,
So,
my second strike was somebody flagged my video about the World Doctors Alliance. It had
oh,
like, I don't know, a little bit over 50,000 views.
uh-huh.
And then I received a comment. I can't understand why YouTube allows this misinformation here. And then YouTube, a question mark.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, Judith, if you would just wear the mask for 2 weeks, we could go back to normal. I don't know if you know that. If we all just wear the mask for 2 weeks, we can go back to normal. That's what I've heard.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we are doing it to ourselves. Yeah, it cannot be that there is a discussion about all of this, and there is only one opinion. The Truth Ministry of YouTube has spoken,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I have switched a lot of videos on private. They can no longer be seen on YouTube, so we will see.
Mm-hmm. Well, something will come up, and I think they talk about this breakaway civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we're the breakaway civilization. You know,
Yeah.
because what they don't realize is eventually there will be a hard split. It's already kind of like people are moving to different areas, which is being like, if you listen to Steve Pachenik when he pops up on that show where they talk about that stuff, if you read in between the lines, his group, they are totally fine with collapsing the U.S.
Mm.
And he's talking about, oh yeah, Alex, we're moving to the middle, the center country, the heartland, and Texas and all that.
Mm.
And I think he lives in Florida, so maybe Florida will be fine. But at some level, that it is a controlled demolition, right? But just from what's happening, and then the kind of restrictions, or that Saturn restriction they're placing on us,
Mm.
it's like you're squeezing a balloon and it's going to pop out on the other side. So people are naturally going to start to come up with alternatives. And I don't know if you've watched some of the 4chan trolls, and how they just it's a kind of a, I don't know what the word is, but it's group intelligence, right? It's
Mm.
almost like cryptocurrency mining,
Mm-hmm.
where the famous one was Shia LaBeouf. I think that's his name, right? He
Yeah.
is in the Transformer movies, right? And they just trolled him to no end, and they were to the level where, because he had a live stream cam, and they kept trolling his cam, so he said, okay, forget this, I'm not going to put it in the city, it's going to be in the countryside. And there was one webcam that was trained on a flag, and I think his thing was, he will not divide us. It was an anti-Trump thing.
Mm.
But these nerds, and they call autists, they call weaponized autism, Judith, on 4chan, they figured out the patterns of the planes going by the flag, and then they figured out it was in this general location. Then they sent out somebody to drive by and keep honking the horn until they could hear the horn on the webcam. Then they found the flag, they pulled the flag down, and I think they put up like a Pepe the Frog flag or a Kekistan flag. Do not underestimate the power of these weaponized autists, Judith. I think, you know, again, going back to, the system has unlimited money, they have all these things, but they're really not that smart. And the nooks and crannies of this cracked earth has some real oddballs that are very advanced. So, I think, yeah, it's going to get serious, but there's too many holes, and there's too many. I think that the best that they can do is capture the 50 something percent, 50+% of the normies.
Mm.
But there's no way that they can lock it down like they would want to.
Mm.
And then, so in the general, the Aquarian age, right, you're gonna have that stereotypical, Brave New World society with the hive mind people, but that's kind of boring, and Aquarius likes real weirdos. So the real fringe people with a more open mind, I think that has to be allowed to exist at some level too. And you see this in a lot of the dystopian sci-fi movies.
Mm.
There's usually like the dome cities, right, which would be like the smart cities, and then there's some kind of like neutral zone, or like some like wild area where these people, and they're like, oh, don't go there. I think, you can even see in these dystopian movies, it's not all just one controlled like AI society. There's pivot people living outside of that, so.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, Pichinik is also the one who said that this entire election chaos is a sting operation.
Well, he also said that he wants to install the Trump family and Jared Kushner as a kind of a dynasty. So that already tells you something else. He goes, oh yeah, Alex, yeah, Trump's gonna win. We'll have Jared Kushner in there, and then he'll be president. And it's like, hello. Are we gonna replace the Supreme Court with the Sanhedrin too? Is that gonna happen too?
Yeah.
We'll be under the no-hide laws. Is that what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think Trump has still a chance to go?
I mean, we'll find out soon, because I
Mhm.
think it's already the 2nd. I think the 6th is when they
Mhm.
have the whatever it is, confirmation or something. But I wouldn't be surprised, Judith, if he gets back in, because
Me
if you
neither.
really wanted to F up America and crack it even more, give us another couple years of this division. And while Biden Harris,
It's a
they'll
division as well.
they'll roll, but the thing is that they'll roll everything out at quadruple speed. But as far as like the riots in the streets and those kind of things, put Trump back in. Because see, the left wing, I think, is if you want to say something that the left does very well, the so-called left, right? Because these are all kind of like constructs, but they are very well organized. They're very good at organizing, even if they're really frail and they can barely like throw a punch or something. They're very well organized, and that kind of just totally disappears if that kind of left. Because where was the right wing the last years? You
Yeah.
really didn't see any of that, right? They were just this is the problem with the right. They're all talk until the shots really get fired, right? Which really, it was almost getting to that point, but generally the right wing, it's like, okay, we trust the system. Let's put it through the process. It's like, well, they don't realize there is no system, right? It should be plainly obvious, right? In fact, think about how obvious the vote fraud was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's on purpose. That is on purpose to let the people, it's a demoralization campaign to let the people know you have no power and the system's totally done, right?
Mm.
This is one of the problems with the right wing or the Trumpers or the QAnon people. It's like even at this point, right? They're like, well, if we just prove that the voting machines were fixed, that the software was fixed, then Trump is rightfully the president. It's like, well, on paper, but they don't realize you put him in now, it's even worse because now we're like months, like many weeks after the election, right? You
Mm.
want to put him in now?
Mm.
I mean, even though it was fixed,
Mm.
they kind of have a skewed. I think both sides kind of have a skewed view of reality. But if I was a master, archontic chess player, I'd probably want Trump in there because the whole plan is to collapse the U.S. Right? If
Mm.
that's your objective, put Trump back in
Yeah.
because Trump is far more polarizing. I think.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is because we've come to this point, you probably will see more so-called right-wing protests and riots
Mm.
because of everything that's going on economically. We're in another so-called lockdown here in Southern California, but now it's starting to get split. Some areas they're saying even the the sheriffs, right? They're saying they're not going to enforce the shutdowns of the restaurants
Mm.
in the more conservative areas. But then here in LA,
Yeah.
businesses are just closing because they can't handle another
Mm.
lockdown. But so I think it probably won't be just the BLM Antifa protests anymore. And that is, this whole year is that Mercurial Gemini energy. So, which is the twins, right? Gemini polarity, twins, two sides. But then Gemini also rules populism, which I think also you can see in Trump. Whatever people think of Trump, he is a populist figure, right? So you're going to see, quote unquote, the street out in the streets this year, and throw the economic collapse on top of it. It's really going to put some fire under street action, I think, this year.
Mm.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview. There is a channel on YouTube. It's called Planet Lockdown. And they are doing a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And they had an interview with Catherine Austin Fitz.
Oh yeah, that's been going around. I haven't seen it yet. Tell me what you thought.
It's really great, I have to
Uh-huh.
say. And she and her team, they did. I have published it on my brand YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
and they did. You know where the riots were?
Mm-hmm.
They collected all that information, and then they had a second look at it, where exactly those businesses were located.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the majority of them are in a so-called opportunity zone.
Mm-hmm.
And she says what is actually happening is this is real estate acquisition.
Oh yeah. Well, even de Blasio in New York,
Mm.
there were some articles that came out maybe 6 months ago talking about how de Blasio and some of his, that kind of circle are very interested in buying up real estate because the high rent areas in New York, there was like 50% of the people are gone. And I read later, Apple, Google, and some other, these kind of tech companies are buying up huge spaces in New York City now. So,
Hmm.
why not, right? But the thing is that this should be obvious, but then most people, they don't know their history.
Yeah.
If you talk like 1960s, that's like, you know, hundreds of years ago to the average person. They don't know what was going on. So if you don't know your history, then see, you and I, when most of your viewers, we actually were probably called information hounds. We're always looking at the data points, but to the average person, I don't even know how they see the world because everything is sort of like one-off, unconnected events, right?
Mm.
How can you even
I
understand
don't
anything?
know either. I
Yeah.
recently I had a phase where I found myself thinking, I don't want to live any longer among those monkeys.
Well,
And then
that,
I
that, that
started laughing at my own thought.
well, especially right now. So as far as and this is just one way to look at things, but as
Mhm,
far as the astrological trend, we started this True North Gemini in May of 2020,
mhm,
and it runs until January 2022. So all through this year, it's going to be Gemini, right? Which
mhm.
is opposite to your Sagittarian sensibility. So truth, like we don't want to hear no truth. We want to hear like so that's what I've been doing a lot of times on I'm still on the Facebook, but sometimes I'll post double meanings and things like that
Mm.
because nobody, in general, I would say this: the people that know, they already know. But for a lot of the normies, the only way to even breach that kind of or put something into conversation, even in certain areas, is you gotta kind of make it look like you think like them, but you're not, or it could be read two ways, like that Gemini thing, the trickery. But yeah, truth in those kind of things, it's not really favored for all this year.
Mhm.
So us personally, we could watch Judith or look into things, but uh, you know, there's like the seasons, right? So the season of truth is off in the future. It's not right now for the general conversation. That's why all the churches are closed too, because Sagittarius rules the preacher and temples and churches. So it's no surprise that they're closed now. So
Mm.
you could call this period we're in, maybe the 2020 and 2021, it's a high time of satanic activity
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people that they want to be fed the lies, and the lies will be more out there if you try to well, I mean, you're talking about the strikes and those kind of things, right?
Mm.
The truth is obviously not being supported in
Yeah.
certain forums right now, but
Yeah.
that's okay because we have to be the trickster and we have to be juggling and moving. That's a way to really make it through this year. You can't have any real fixed idea about I'm gonna do this, and this is the way I like it, so that's the way I'm gonna do it. If that doesn't work, you're gonna be stuck.
Mm.
You're gonna have to be open to being a more, you could call it scatterbrained, but
Yeah.
that kind of like Mercurial Gemini, like low attention span, that'll work better because you're gonna have to try different things to
Yeah.
really make it
You
happen
know,
this year.
the problem with brand YouTube is I can import my videos from YouTube in
Uh-huh.
full length, no
Uh-huh.
problem,
Uh-huh.
but I can't upload the file itself.
Oh, why is
It's
that?
totally weird. And the thing is, the minute YouTube pulls a video or pulls the channel,
Uh-huh. That's it.
then
Uh-huh.
it is gone there as well. So
Y-
that is not an alternative. Yeah.
You know what,
And
Judith?
that is why I went over to Odyssey.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these bit shoots or brand YouTube, if they're just limited hangouts, maybe it's owned by YouTube. Because there's this whole thing like, oh, get off of Twitter, like talk to me on Telegram and Signal and Parler. It's like, you don't think, you know, you don't think that's infiltrated already? Like people, oh, I only talk on Signal. It's like, you don't think they could read everything? Give
Yeah,
me a
I
break.
know what you mean. But you know what? For
Yeah.
the moment, I'm just
Yeah.
happy that there are a few
Alternatives. Yeah.
possibilities where I do not get kicked all the time, because
Uh-huh.
somebody
I,
thinks.
I think eventually, better alternatives will come out, but we'll probably have to pay a little bit more than we're used to. And it's not like it may not be a lot, but you may have to pay like $10 a month or something for some, and that's just value because why do you think they've allowed us to be on these platforms for free for so long?
Yeah.
Because they want our information. That's why they
Mhm.
want to see what we're doing. But it'll happen. I always believed you that there's going to be a way, and there's going to be restriction also. But you know, I think one thing that I saw clearly in the last few months, it's a lot of the darker things that are happening is all due to fear.
Mm.
I mentioned this. I was in Brazil for a few weeks in December, and when you've traveled a lot, you've been
Mhm.
in a lot of different places. When you see things happening, and this whole lockdown is a worldwide situation, that's another sign we're in the Aquarian age, right?
Mm.
Because no matter who you are, we're all in this group experience, right? You could even be in like the farthest corners of like, I think even in Ecuador, they're like wearing the mask and locked down, right? Uh, so just seeing the situation in Brazil as an outsider was informative, and one of the things I saw, I had dinner with a couple, and they had only been out to eat outside the house once since the lockdown started in I think March, and I'm like, why? But the answer is a lot of people they're afraid, and again, left and right is kind of a construct, right? But the left just has so much fear. I don't know why, but that kind of fear will compel you to do anything for safety, you
Mm.
know? And this has been shown in polls too. I mean, some of the QAnon Trump people are nuts, but they want to go back to work. They're like, well, if I want to do something and I get sick, well, that was on me. Now the left would say like, it's all because of you people. See, you are the super spreaders. If we only stayed locked down, if we only like quit our life for 2 weeks and wore the mask, everything would go back to normal. Well, that's not true because you could go look on the UN website right now, and it says COVID measures till 2025. So, and there's a whole great reset book and all that, but it's really the fear, and I feel like in some ways they're not wrong about some of these right wing figures. Now, like in Brazil, it's Bolsonaro, but U.S. is Trump, right? They are tapping into something about Trump because I think they know at a deep subconscious level there's something about this man and my reality is collapsing and it's all intertwined and I'm scared. This man is terrifying. They're not completely wrong because you have to know Trump, he is an Aquarian figure because he's a Gemini, but his sun is conjunct Uranus, which is what? That's chaos. He's a chaos master.
Mm.
His book, right? The Art of the Deal. His preferred method is to just like say something outrageous, like basically throw a bomb in the room, make everybody scatter. Then he kind of like takes a few steps back and he says, "Well, we can do this," and then he has control over that situation. So Trump actually survives in chaos, but is that really good for a country? It's good to bring up the hidden things, right, Judith? That was one thing. I don't think anybody can argue. There were so many issues that were underneath the surface that had to come out. But you can also look at from the opposite side. If you wanted to collapse a country, can you, as Westerners in general, can you handle the truth of what's been below the surface all this time? And I was mentioning going to Brazil. Although many people, especially social justice minded people, would tell you we're all the same, that it should be plainly obvious we're not all the same. Now, on a spiritual level, yes,
Yeah.
we have a brotherhood at that level, but I mean, you were married to an African before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is your experience, are you guys clones? Are you exactly the same? I don't think so.
No.
Everybody has their Asian, black, white. We all have our inclinations, right? So being in Brazil, as you could consider Latin America like a more so-called illogical, sacred feminine yin of the yin yang cultures. There, they might actually be able to handle some of these things better, as far as like the exposure of the darkest depths of what's going on. But Western culture, being that kind of Mars Aries, it's like Yang culture, right? It's unyielding, right? So the positive aspect is able to manifest, do what you want. It's more of a pure ego
Mm.
mentality, but it's like very unyielding, right? It's like our way is the best way, especially America. It's like I don't know if there's any other country that I think people might get scared again if Germans start to say Germany, Deutschland. Only Americans, right? In your experience, I don't know if you've been in any other place, but
Imagine we did that
yeah,
right away. Ah,
yeah,
the neo-Nazis.
right. But Americans have always been that crass, like USA, USA. We have that in us, but guess what? The opposite side of that is there is a time coming very soon when I think there's not going to be America. At least the 50 states is not going to be America, right? So can
That
Americans
might be.
handle this? Can the ego of the Western or the Americans handle this? Can they handle that there's been these satanic cults? Can they handle the kind of deep corruption? I don't think so.
Mm.
I think that it'll transform. Maybe what we have now in the US will collapse and there'll be some kind of low grade civil war,
Mm.
and then it'll be reborn, right? Because in the death there's always a rebirth. But going back to, you could look at the position that many of these things that have happened, I guess they had to come out. But if you wanted to collapse the US, put Trump back in. Because the general Americans, I mean, even the QAnon people, who I've met some of them, and they're very nice people, and I think in some ways they're a lot more educated, or I find them more interesting to talk to than that left position, right?
But do
But
you
I
think
think
that?
I think well, let me just say this. I think a lot of those Q people, see, I think you and I, Judith, we pick things up over decades, right?
Mhm.
But these Q people had it drop in them in 1 year, and their brains melted, and they went nuts. I mean, could you handle all this stuff in like a short period of time? I don't know. It'd be kind of disturbing, I think,
Yeah, I'm happy that it took years.
Mm-hmm.
But do you really think that, let's say, Kamala will be president? Because let's face it, that's basically what it will boil down to, I think, in that scenario. Do you really think the other side, the Trumpers, they would not go bonkers, and it would also be a huge, huge
You would have protests and things, but it's
Mhm.
not going to be like it's not going to
BLM?
be like the BLM ones,
Mm,
because as far as chaos, the left really has more that element as far as just no rules,
mm,
like they're controlled, but that's really it to do anything to achieve the outcome.
mhm,
And a lot of them, they're not trying to build something, they're trying to collapse it. I know some of these people, and they're broken people, a lot of them, and a lot of them, they just it's a kind of a nihilist position. They just want to destroy everything to make everybody else feel like crap. Remember that Chop Chaz? If that's the future, we're in some trouble, because
yeah.
that looked like a S hole. It just looked looked like a dump. Like probably homeless people were moving away, saying like, you guys are kind of like bringing the neighborhood down. I'm gonna move my little like tent down the road, because yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, that's one of the things about the right, so-called right-wing position. To this point, it's all talk.
Mm,
But the thing is, I think the reason though is that now, it's a stereotype, but there's some truth to it. Them good old boys, they shoot to kill.
Mhm.
So once the guns come out, it's not like we're flashing them to scare you or something. When the guns come out, they're gonna shoot to kill. And so that's the thing, though. And I think Europe is probably the same.
Mm.
Although the Europe has a reputation of being more balanced in some way. Of course, a lot of you guys don't have the type of guns we have, but I assure you, I've said this before, that white man, he got a switch. But once it gets flipped on, I'm gonna duck behind a tree because then it's really gonna get crazy. Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying though? I think this has been done for a reason though too, especially with the whole the so-called refugee wave that happened in the
Mhm.
last 5+ years. That was done for a purpose to bring it to this point because now you see extreme right movements in Europe,
Mhm.
right? And it's been set up. The left has no answers, so who are you going to go to? The extreme right, right?
Mhm.
And they
That
want that.
has no answer as well.
Yeah, well, but what the power structure wants is to have that flip switch, the flip go boop, and
Mm.
then now it's a fight for survival because it's gotten so bad. But that's no good either.
Mhm.
Basically, they probably want a chaos scenario like is happening here in U.S.
Mm.
where it's. I can tell you this. I sure wouldn't want to be like a Muslim immigrant. I don't care how many Muslims are in Europe. If this ever happens, Judith, there's no escape.
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And the thing is, what do they always do? They put two sides against each other. So while on the street people are fighting each other, now they're not looking up. It's been the same story for thousands of years. It even you can go back to the story of Atlantis. Who are the ones that were screwed everything up? It was these egghead tech people and the scientists.
Yeah,
It's
who
the
else?
same today. You know, it
The
wasn't
mad
Joe
scientists.
it wasn't Joe the Uber driver causing the problems. It was these damn scientists and eggheads.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Texas
Yep.
might be one of the last stable regions.
Oh, it's pretty much for certain because I had been
Okay,
saying this.
can you
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit why?
Yeah. Well, I picked this up. I'll give her credit. Lotta Ray. She's a Russian esoteric lady,
Hmm.
and she was versed in Feng Shui. So Chinese very practical, right? So Feng Shui. Uh, they did this a lot in Hong Kong too. They literally made the buildings so to shoot negative energies toward their enemy bank opposition, these different corporate entities, they would make the buildings, you've probably seen Hong Kong. Some of the towers are very odd angles and things like that, but it was for a reason. Either to attract prosperity or to shoot negative energy at the other building, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, which is what? That's basically for financial reasons. But you can use feng shui, and you can also, if you go to like the more holistic view, you can create harmony, right? The
Hmm.
the classical furniture in China does not have hard edges; it's always round because
Hmm.
they say that if you come to a corner, it shoots a negative energy. They call it shooting arrows, so it's always like rounded. So there's a practical, holistic basis to it too. But there's a type of feng shui called flying stars feng shui, where you can use it to buy property. So let's say like buy this property, this area, nobody's interested now, but in 20 years, we know the prosperity direction will switch to this area. So it's a good investment, right? But you can project this kind of thinking to the planet. So Feng Shui has a 180-year calendar in 9 periods. There are 20-year blocks. So we're coming to the last period 9 in 2024. So 2024 to 2044, that's the last period. This is very key too, because you could see this in like the astrological cycles. You can see this in numerology. Uh, and I think you and I can feel it. We're coming to some kind of end game where we're coming to that singularity, right? So 2024 the prosperity direction switches to south. So that's actually not good for U.S. in general because U.S. is west, right?
Mm.
And ultimate west is what? It's where I am right now. It's California. So 2024, the energy will completely drop out of U.S. But even the south of U.S. will do better than the other regions. So what's the most southern region? It's Texas, right?
Mm.
So what are the areas that should do well? Well, because it's direction, but it's also like there's qualities associated, like the elements, Chinese system, the elements and things are related to south. So tropical islands should do well, resort type areas, Latin America, Africa, maybe parts of Southeast Asia. Basically you're talking about global south, like below the equator. But even for U.S., the southern part of U.S. will do better. But then if you think about it, if you break it down, and Texas is about the same size as Germany. It's a very large state. It's one of the largest states. You have your ports, important for trade. Ports, right on the Gulf of Mexico. It's connected to Mexico. It's another one, right? A lot of trade there. You have farmland, right? And then if you needed more, you're right next to Mexico, right? Texas they have some beautiful land in Texas, I got to say. It's very beautiful and a lot of creeks and rivers. It's like to me in Central Texas where I was, it's a land of creeks and rivers. Then they have tech, right? Cuts both ways. They have Apple and Google, but the fact that Apple and Google and like Tesla Motors, they're all making bases in Austin. That says
and
something,
even
right?
the NASDAQ has
NASDAQ moving to Dallas. They're still in talks. Goldman Sachs, those evil MFs, they're moving to Florida from you. So this is the thing, right? Why is Wall Street moving to Texas? Why is Wall Street moving to Florida? Right? Because they know something.
Probably.
Texas has gas. They have petroleum. And they got a lot of MFs with guns, Judith. They got so many guns. That's about, and they have a lot of ex-military there, because the South, I haven't been everywhere, but I've been to like Arkansas and I guess Texas. But when
I've been to Texas as well.
When I was in Arkansas, I mean, there's a whole lot of nothing out there. I mean, beautiful land, but it's very sparsely populated. But I could see, what do they have down there? And I'm not saying all the South is just open land, but as a generality, for me coming from California, just going to like deep South, I was like, wow, they got church, football, and the Masonic Lodge. That's about it, right? So yeah, but and the military. That's what I was thinking, and the military. So they have a lot of ex-military there. That's about as much as you need to have your own country, right?
Yeah.
People that can defend the area. I think everywhere is becoming somewhat Aquarian. So I really think, Judith, there is no real true conservative place anymore. But on the scale, Texas is much more conservative.
Yeah.
So that so in a time of chaos, you might want to be in a place that's kind of more conservative, I think. If you don't want, because if we're going into like a real American implosion, you may not want to be out here in California, I think also going back to the Feng Shui thing too, 2024, which was what they said, it's not that far off. It's going to be here before we know it. I wouldn't be surprised if some kind of earth changes hit, specifically the U.S. So, if you're in Santa Monica or Venice, good luck. Or like Manhattan, good luck. There's a let me see. There's a very good map. I've shown this before, but there's a North American eclipse that happened in 2017. That's when Trump, you probably remember, he was looking straight up at the sky. You're never supposed to look straight up at the eclipse, right? The ancients, they said like it's a malefic, right? But Trump, being the chaos master, he was looking straight up at the at the sun, trying to soak up all that chaos energy. So so that was 2017. In 2024, there's a mirror eclipse. Okay, so I can share this if you. I don't know
Yeah,
if I can share
sure.
this.
I know what you mean, but it's always good to have another look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see this, right? There you go. X marks the spot. So we have a major earthquake fault line, right, pretty much right where the X marks the spot there. It's called the New Madrid Fault. It's capable of like 9.0 earthquakes. When it happened, I think in the 1800s, it was so massive it made the Mississippi River flow backwards. So again, people think this is flaky New Age talk, but as above, so below. Okay, if the people are so split, where literally people in their own family are not talking to each other, you don't think the country can split in half? You don't think the country can crack in half? The Chinese traditional concept, they had the mandate of heaven, and they said there's a dynastic cycle. So where we would be at the end of the dynasty, when everybody's so corrupt, the emperors are corrupt, then the dams would start to break and millions of people would die because they weren't keeping the infrastructure intact. This is where America is right now, right? Now look at this guy, right? This is oh, you'll love this one even better. There you go. 2017, Trump was looking straight up at that eclipse and the conclusion. And so this is like what? It's 3 plus. So this might even be the 7 years of tribulation for America, because basically we entered the underworld in 2017, right when Trump got in. And if Trump were to get another 4 years, then when that administration is concluded, this was like the 7 years of underworld for U.S. and then we come out. But then by that time, maybe our karma is cleansed, but the country may not exist anymore. Yeah. So, well, the thing is that, see, a lot of us were looking at this before Trump got in, and a lot of us knew America was done in 2024. So I don't take all these political things so not seriously, but I don't take them like like it's so personal to a lot of people. If you know it's over in 2024, it doesn't really matter. You know, you could kind of push it. It's going to be a little worse, going to be a little better, a little worse. But, Trump, to me, although I do find him highly entertaining, he is integral to the process of the breakdown or the last phase of the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. And so many people see him as a savior.
Well, he's both. He's a damn devil, and he's a savior, because he's a Gemini, so he's both. And then, does it really matter if he's in on it or he's just being used? It doesn't matter. The outcome's the same, right? Trump doesn't have to be totally aware of all the outcomes. I mean, the man's ego is so huge. He would take a second term. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was Trump with his kind of ego, even though like a lot of things he wanted to do, supposedly he couldn't do, I mean, I would feel like God, the kind of rally, because it's interesting too, right? Right up to the lead up to the election, those Trump rallies, that was like the Beatles. Like, he's bigger than Michael Jackson. He's just like a rock star, right? And then you look at the Biden, there was no rally. They had like, what, 50 people at most, something? I mean, Trump must have...
5.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he beat Russia Gate, right? He beat Ukraine Gate. He beat the so-called Pussy Gate, right? He even beat kind of coronavirus at a point. It's like nothing could touch him, So I don't know what kind of... I had what some people would call a black magician tell me this. He said, when I saw that Trump beat that, when he said grab him by the pee, right? He goes, I knew this guy was dealing with some serious chaos magic. Because anybody else would have just like, but with Trump, he's just like, Well, on to the next thing. So, but in a way, Trump is God chosen to be where he is.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you like it or not, Trump is God chosen to play this role. And it's like people, now I'm not saying Trump is Hitler, but you know, these kind of people, they were put there for a reason. And
Mm.
it wasn't by their power. They were meant to play this role, you know? And Trump, the one thing that comes to mind that, you know, although at some level this is a script we're playing out, these leftists must feel so impotent, you know, those years up until now. They must have felt so impotent. It's like, God, we have the media, we have the banks on our side, we have the corporations on our side. This guy's the orange man, he's terrible, and everything we throw at him wouldn't work, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And I don't think, although things are scripted, I don't think everything's planned out, because the amount of things that were thrown at Trump, I don't think that was totally scripted, you know?
Mm.
So you gotta give him that. Even me, I was like, damn, this guy has godlike powers, because anybody else would have been dead by now or something. But at this point, like I said, if I was the powers that be, I wouldn't be so opposed to putting Trump back in if you really wanted to collapse America, for sure, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah. But then again, what are the two options? Neither of them are really good, you know, because
Mm.
there's no coming back from where we are.
Mm.
The system is pretty much done. You know, we're like a banana republic, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the sloppiness of
Uh-huh.
this entire chaotic thing that we are
Hmm.
experiencing right now. I remember in the very beginning, even Boris Johnson, he was talking about, "Mm, let herd immunity take care of that.
Right.
Yeah, no
Well,
need
he
to."
did a 180.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Here in Germany, same thing. Oh, this will be over very soon. Nothing to panic about in the very, very beginning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then it felt as if they got a call, or, somebody
Oh yeah.
intervened and said, guys, we think you didn't get the memo right. It's time to switch over to panic mode.
So, same thing with the governor of Texas, Abbott. He
Hmm.
did like a 180 too. You know. So,
Yeah.
um, but you know, I go back to the whole thing about we're in a game, and these controls, they're in a game too.
Mm.
So, you know, like the Buddha said, Judith, you know, the only thing that's constant is impermanence. So,
Exactly.
uh, and you know, it's a funny thing, because I think a lot of us are aware of these like this new age pablum of like, just manifest it, you know, like the karma will come back. But guess what? It is true, Judith. I'm noticing, because I deal with a lot of the energy tools and these kind of holographic energies. I'm kind of surprised. Like, it does seem like things are happening quicker, or it's
Hmm.
just a lot easier. Like the now again, these are kind of like new agey kind of things that have been going on, but I'm kind of seeing that it is happening. That there seems to be this ambient level, the energetic level is kind of ramping up, and if that was true, then it would lead to you being able to make thought forms hit a lot quicker. And I'm seeing that with the radionics equipment. It's
Hmm.
happening pretty quick now. So the flip side of that is, you're doing some bad stuff,
Hmm.
you better watch out, because it's going to come back. I think things are coming back a lot quicker than they used to,
Hmm.
you know. So, well, you know, so, you know, people just kind of watch things, and you decide, you make a assessment of what's going on. But if you take it to the astrological or the esoteric archetypes, the air signs are kind of like energetically a step up from the water signs. Like, we're going from Pisces to Aquarius. In that, we were saying many times, right? This Aquarius sign it looks like a Wi-Fi sign, so things could happen a lot quicker, right? And the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus, which is like a circle, and it looks like it has like the young kids don't know this, but the old TVs they used to have, we call rabbit ears or the antenna
Yeah.
array, right?
Yeah.
So Uranus is all about that kind of like pulling in information and channeling energies and things like that. So if you look at it that way, it's kind of like not surprising that at least some of us are noticing that there is kind of that trend that even though we're kind of like just on the cusp of entering the Aquarian energies, my eyes are kind of like, oh, yeah, yeah. Just it's not even a lot of the things I'm doing. I'm not even spending that much time on. I'm like, whatever. eBay auction, like eBay auctions sold or whatever. Little circuits. I did less than 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then boom, it's happening. Like, oh, there goes a bid. Happened like 1 hour after I did a little intention.
So when you talked about the idea that it might be us who are the breakaway civilization,
Yep.
how are we going to do this on the practical level?
I think if you want to like really win,
Mm-hmm.
you set up your life to operate as freely as you can. And obviously in this decade, probably until the late 2020s, there's going to be a lot of lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
But there was somebody said that it's not how much freedom you have, it's what you do with the freedom that you do have, right?
Mm.
Yeah, even if you're restricted, are you using everything you can? Or a lot of the time it's a mindset thing too. And we'll see what happens, but even people that I interact with, they say like, you sure laugh a lot. Like, you seem kind of lighthearted. I don't even look at myself that way, but I'm like, wow. But it goes back to the fear thing, right? A lot of people, they just I think some of us in this area, we've got our ass kicked so hard. We've already been through a lot of stuff, so it's like, it's not that serious, I'm like, oh, they're rolling out the shots, but what do you expect? Because see, the thing is again, we understand at some level this is a script, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us have either spent years trying to like fix our own traumas or health problems or whatever, and then also in the esoteric realm, and especially I should mention for Gemini trends, for True Node Gemini, because see, one power of Sagittarius, which is the opposite node, right? It's a theoretical, more high-minded understanding, right? But Gemini is like the street, and it's just like trying things out, kind of hands-on. And I can tell you, Judith, one of the great things about energy tools is hands-on. You can see what works and doesn't work, right? So just from trying things out, physically with the energy tools, and I've done this for the last 6 years, it's kind of like we're mapping out the structure through understanding, through listening to different interviews, different people's points of view. But then literally it's like the Indiana Jones where there's the stones he steps on, and I tried out this energy tool and I put it out here, I put my foot out and I'm like, yep, it's solid, right? So we're sort of like mapping out the reality in this way, where the average, and we know these trends, these cycles, these scripts, where the average person is totally like lost and they're waiting for like the MSM mainstream media position. That is a pretty weak basis to be on right now, so it's the weirdos. So weirdos that have been trying this stuff out, that we're actually number one, we're not so tied to the mainstream narrative, and our investment in quote unquote normal is like 0 to 0. But for the average people, they will do anything for some semblance of stability and to go back to 2019. Well, that ain't ever going to happen. But they'll
and
try,
I don't want that to happen, because that was bad enough. That brought us here. That normality.
But see, they're totally lost. So if you've never considered anything, go through Judith's video list. If you have never considered one of these things, you are in trouble. Even these QAnon people who, the thing is, QAnon, I think, is probably 70% real info because they've incorporated so many things that have been the research that was going on for years.
Mm.
But then they just kind of went off the cliff with it, right? Even the QAnon people are far ahead of the average person, And I said on a interview recently, from my trip in Brazil, I was just observing, and I was like, you know what? I'm not an evangelical. I'm not a Catholic. But the funny thing is, at the end of the day, I think a lot of these hardcore Christians, they'll still be human 10 years out. A lot of these neoliberals, they're going to have the nanobots and the hydrogel
Yeah,
running through their veins.
exactly. Yeah.
So think about that.
Mm.
These so-called regressive traditionalists,
Mm.
they might do a lot better. And a lot of them, they're these like God, country, and guns types. They're going to be doing a lot better than these like modern neoliberal types, so.
Exactly. And I think what this entire situation also brought to light was, in general, our neurotic attitude towards sickness and death.
Oh, yeah. Did you hear me talk about that? That people are not, they're uncomfortable with the concept of death, especially in the West. But I think it's worldwide now because the modern culture is this way. I remember, Judith, and this is, the memory is so faint because it was told to me by my grandmother on my dad's side, so it was my dad's mom. But she grew up in Hawaii, so obviously Japanese background, but she grew up in Hawaii. But she was what they call a kibe, is the Japanese Americans that were sent back as children to be educated in Japan, and then they came back, right? But she said, so did this happen or not? I don't know. It's in my memory, but it was told to me when I was so little. And it's the whole thing about having the family member die in the home. Because so many people today, they send the loved one to the hospital, and you might see them once at the end, or totally like the old folks home calls you like, oh, by the way, your mom died, probably hadn't seen them in years or something, But I remember my grandma telling me, and she was from Hiroshima, so it's the southern Japan, that when an old person died, in my memory, it was like an old man died, they washed the body, and then they put the body in like a, not like a sake container, but they had these large drum kind of things. It was like wooden. There was slats, and then they would put the body in there and bury it. So somebody that's familiar with Japanese history, tell me this is true, because this is in my mind. I remember when I was very young that my grandma told me, I think she had seen this. But in general, it's just known throughout the world that the family members died in the home.
Yeah.
So the children from an early age, they saw the circle of life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And the thing is that so many of us have been separated from that. We're separated from the reality of life, right? That if you're scared of death, you're not ready to live.
Yeah.
And I don't want to die prematurely, but I could tell you that, especially if you have seen through the other side, or you're aware of these multi-dimensional layers, because a lot of times they're like past life, right? We see it as past, but actually I think all these things are happening at the same time. And if you've had enough contact and you've done readings, or you're just aware of this, I'm not so afraid of death. It's a change, right? And if they cannot scare you of dying, this is a problem for the power structure. Because then too, it's like, maybe they could torture me and make me say something, but in general, my sentiment is I'm not going to go out on my knees.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have people that are not afraid of death, this is stereotypically, this was the power of like the military class in Japan, the samurai. Of course, Judith, all these Bushido codes, they were formalized after all the fighting was over. So it's very easy, right? Do you know that? They're like, oh, samurai, Bushido. When the Warring States period was happening, it's like the Civil War in Japan, the people were flipping alliances, you know, all the time.
Mm.
Because when it's really happening like that, there's no loyalty. You know, if it gets to certain points, when people are really tested, you're gonna see what they're made of. And in that period, there was no real Bushido code. You know,
Mm.
it was formalized after in the Tokugawa time. They formalized the Bushido.
Yeah.
Uh, but stereotypically, this was the what made the most excellent warrior. Is like they have the no mind. You know,
Mm.
so yeah.
As you know, I dropped Tibetan Buddhism,
Uh huh.
but I have to say I certainly um, carried some valuable nuggets from there.
Sure.
And
Well, you know what? It's like anything, right?
mm,
It's never 100% BS. There has to be a high amount of nuggets that you can draw from, right? So
yeah, exactly. And did I tell you about the pova,
no.
where the teacher um, it's 3 days and you have to meditate, and it's more like a puja. There's a
Oh
lot of
yeah. Uh-huh.
singing
Yeah.
also going on,
Uh-huh.
and you have 3 hours in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. And then later on the teacher checks your head, because
Mhm.
if you successfully uh, have thrown out your consciousness, you have a little hole in your head.
Oh,
And
really?
I, I will send you a link where you can see that in Tibet. I'm so sorry, Masaki. My cat is freaking out here with her toy.
Hey, you know what? It's New Year's. It's just the day after New Year's, so
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
celebrating.
So anyway, I did that session. I did that twice the next year as well.
Mhm.
And then after that, I thought, okay, now you have done that. How can we do something that's practical with it?
Mhm.
And then I started working voluntarily in a hospice for a year.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know how that sounds, but I had a lot of fun there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Did you get to talk to the people?
Yes. Yes.
Because when I was working at the Japanese American Museum here in LA, one of the things I, I wasn't thinking consciously about it at the time, but we did a lot of what they call life history interviews.
Mm,
And so just, you know, you basically they a lot of them were volunteers at the museum
mm,
and they were, you know, retirees. So you sit a camera in front of them and they talk for like 2 hours.
mm.
But, you know, it's very informative because you're hearing somebody with life experience and a lot of those kind of things you can't get online or in a book,
No,
you know?
no.
And especially there were people from my own community, so it's just interesting hearing the story. It's what they call wisdom, Judith. That's what some of the youngsters need. Listen to the old people. You know, we might have been through some things, but yeah, that was the education. I would say I got more from that. You know, I was doing sometimes I was running the camera, but a lot of times I was running the boom mic, right? But I got more from that than many of my university classes at UCLA.
Hmm.
Things that stick with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also interesting that you know we had the segregation here, especially pre 1950s in the U.S. In LA, it was segregated. Maybe not by well, it was by it by the housing codes. It was in law. They
Hmm.
had they had housing covenants where you could not buy a house except outside the ghetto. Oh, except if for the ethnics they could buy in the ghetto, but you couldn't buy out. Even the Jews could not buy outside of the ethnic ghettos, and we had like the Mexican ghettos here and the black areas. So the Japanese for LA, if your family has been here pre 1950s, you either lived in the like my dad came from Boyle Heights, it's the East LA classic Mexican ghetto, and my mom was living in the black area, right? So just hearing those kind of things, that's within living memory for us here, So a lot of things have happened. Think of how fast things have changed, how many things have changed in just like one or two lifetimes, right? But it was interesting hearing one of these guys say, we had segregated beaches here, and it was just known, if you're Japanese, you go to this beach, not the other one. And then the guy was saying like, now that I think about it, it kind of pisses me off. But, back then we just accepted it. So, I'm not saying it's right, but it's interesting, right? Because the people that actually lived through it, they kind of had a sense of humor around it. But then the people, these youngsters that never lived through it, they're so angry. They didn't even live through it. But the thing, again, I'm not saying it was right, but the people that were actually living in that time, they molded their life to where they were just living their life. And, I'm sure the darker you were here in the U.S., the worse it was. But for the Japanese, these old timers looking back, they were like, yeah, it was pretty racist, but, it's only when I think about it now, because we just knew, like, if you wanted to avoid trouble, you just lived a certain way, So, yeah.
So 2021 is a 5-year.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be nonstop, Judith. Oh.
Yeah, and me as a 5 as life path number. Yeah, will be interesting.
Well, you know what? So people can, I'm sure you'll post a link, or I'll post in the comments, but last year 2020 was a 4, which is Aquarius energy, right? All those trends will continue, especially since we're now really entering the Aquarian age. But the flavor of 2021 is 5, right? Last year 2 and 2 is 4, so 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5, right? So 5 in the numerology, in the Pythagorean numerology, which goes 1 to 9, 5's in the middle, right? So it does everything before and everything after. They call it the juggler, the master of all trades, the jack of all trades, and the master of none. Gemini people, they're like low attention span, just doing a lot of different things. So what does that mean for this year? Unstable. You could say it unstable, but in another way, for this is the thing. There's never a good or a bad. It is what it is. But I think it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of the people who maybe didn't fit before, right? Because the stereotypical way corporate culture works is like, you follow the steps, right? And you make the progression, the Saturn progression, then you go up. But then, a lot of the artist types or the fringe people, they get bored, right? I don't want to work a cubicle job. Maybe that's where you worked in the airline industry, get to do different things, right?
Yeah, so, I wanted to see the world, and that was one of the, it was well paid during that time, and I did what I wanted to do.
And Sagittarius is the international. It's the foreigner, rules the foreigner, right? Or it rules adventure, like seeing these different places. But I think a lot of the people that were like, people call them harebrained, they're scatterbrained, all this kind of thing, they might actually do quite well this year compared to the average people. Because again, what's that mentality, Judith? The average person, they want to go back to normal. Normal. That doesn't exist anymore. No. Should be obvious. Like basically, as a metaphor, we're living like at ground zero, the Twin Towers in New York, and they're blowing out the foundations. This thing's coming down, right? We ain't never going back to 2019. So it's the hustlers, the people of a different mind, and the people that are not just set on this the one way, right? Because one of the things about the, say, like Europe or the UK or North America, one of the reasons a lot of people have moved to these areas was for the stability, right? Well, we're in the transition now, right? We're in the quote unquote great reset, and we're also in the transition of ages. So there's going to be no stability. So you better have plan A, B, and C, and just be ready to. If you know this, it's going to be a lot easier to operate. If you're thinking like, well, if we just wear the mask and the stability will return, good luck. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think
stuck with
stability
that.
is going to. Yeah, stability is not going to return until the late 2020s.
Mm.
Like 27, 28, 2030. So you're going to see a lot of the trends from last year continue, but it's going to be accelerated. 5 is a mercurial energy, right? So in the numbers, it's 5 is like a Mercury energy. And the 2 signs are Gemini and Virgo, Mercury signs. But in the astrology, we're in true node Gemini, right? So that's telling you this confirmation from 2 systems. It's the Gemini trend, right? So these mercurial energies, they're quick, like the planet Mercury. So I think things are going to go very quick. I think you're going to see the banking and currency crisis start to crop up, and then the supply chain. I think you're going to see more, same as last year, but maybe accelerated. Maybe people moving interstate or more locally.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that doesn't have to involve air travel, because I went to Brazil, but let me tell you, those planes, it was like at least half empty, the flight.
Mm-hmm.
So international is not really favored right now.
Did you have to wear a mask on that flight?
I have my ways, Judith. I had 3 seats. I had 3 seats to myself, so I pretended like I was sleeping, and So, I think you could see people going crazy this year, like literally insane, because Gemini and Virgo, they rule mental illness.
Yeah.
So if you think of all the stresses people are under, and then they realize when the currency starts imploding and these kind of things, or the banking runs, they will realize we are not going back. There is no way, and a lot of people will not be able to handle that. But on the esoteric level, remember we were talking about like the antennas are up, this kind of energy is ramping up. The realizations and the kind of like quote unquote information you can pull in. I don't like to say downloads, information you can pull in. A lot of people, they will not be able to handle this. So they're going to be feeling the society stress, the financial stress, but this kind of ambient energy on the planet's changing, and they could like quote unquote burn their circuits out. Or you could just see people totally infested by entities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think we'll be fine, but don't be surprised if you see people going nuts,
Here in Germany, the following happened. Usually, if you're insolvent as a company, a factory, or whatever, you have to file for bankruptcy. And if you delay that, although you knew that you are not able to pay your bills, then there is a penalty for that. And people might drag you to court if they can prove that you delayed filing for bankruptcy. Okay? So this year, our government, in its infinite wisdom, has released a bylaw, you can say, that nobody, because of Corona, has to file for bankruptcy. But that is running out now. Unless, because this year there will be elections in Germany in autumn.
Okay.
So, meaning maybe they will prolong that, quarter after quarter after quarter until they reach the election, and then they let it all collapse. So some people that have looked at these numbers and what they are doing, they're telling people, you don't have to file for bankruptcy. They are estimating that 500,000 companies will go bankrupt. And here in Germany alone. Okay, so Um,
Well, I mean, it should be plainly obvious. Of course, most people, they don't pay attention to anything, but
yeah.
who did worse and who did better? Well, just like the collapse of 29, right?
Mm,
The so-called Great Depression in the U.S. Because I think one was Weimar Germany. It was a similar
yeah.
situation, though, right?
Yeah.
That time, everything went upside down, but the rich people got richer. That's
Yeah.
what people don't remember. It was it was a thing, and you could look at this as a particular economic cycle where they know the big. You can even see this on like Coinbase, which is one of the most popular cryptocurrency exchanges.
Mm.
Guess what, Judith? Every time there's a big move, there you can't log in.
Yeah.
But I can assure you, who can log in, it's these big institutional funds. But for the little guy, that's when you're gonna catch. You're gonna either sell or whatever.
Mhm.
You can't do anything. So it's always been rigged to a certain extent, right?
Mm,
But these old families, they do the same thing with societies. It's a pump and a dump. They know when it comes to the end of a cycle, they set themselves up perfectly for year zero, the Great Reset, right?
mhm.
They've been doing this for thousands of years. You could even trace back, some of these the black nobility, they were in Italy, and then before Italy, might have been in Persia or something. They've been they've been, and you can even talk about the so-called, whether you believe it or not, archetypally or mythologically, it's true. This whole Atlantean cycle,
Mhm.
they set themselves up to be the ones on top in the next cycle, right? If
Mm.
there was a worldwide flood and they still had even remnants of the technology, they
Yeah.
would have been able to reboot again, right? So
Mm. Do you know about this experiment that they did in China with cryptocurrency that was issued by the Chinese state and let's say the Chinese central bank?
no.
Did you hear that? Okay.
Uh,
What happened was they did a lottery
mm-hmm.
in a city. 50,000 people were picked from that lottery and they got a direct account with the central bank.
Mm-hmm.
And the central bank put 200 yuan into
Mm-hmm.
their account. It's roughly $29 or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then something very interesting happened as well. I'm going to share my screen here.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes.
China and the dawn of digital currency. It's a very, very lengthy article. I will not
Uh-huh.
go through it at all, uh, through all of it, I meant to say, but the CBDC wallet application can be programmed in such a way that funds can only be spent in designated areas and
Oh,
also have a certain expiry date.
it's the social credit score. It's the
Yeah,
UBI.
yeah.
Well, Judith, besides everything being controlled and they can just turn you off and on,
Mhm.
they can completely control the flow of the economy, because if your money has an expiration date, right, and you have to spend it,
Mm.
that's a great deal of control they don't have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
they can only pump the money supply, but then when you have it down to the wallets, the crypto wallets or these digital wallets, and
mhm.
these tokens expire at the end of the month, you will never be able to save anything.
Exactly. Exactly. That is my point. Plus, they also made sure you were not able to
Hmm.
take this money out of this digital wallet and let's say
Hmm.
put it into your account.
Yeah.
That was not possible as well. You could, or you will not be able, let's say, to pay off a debt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is their wet dream.
Well, you know, this is, I said this before on your show, but you know, these avatars, they must have had extreme patience, because when everything is out in the open and people still don't get it.
Mm.
So I think you have to take a step back and say, well, God made these dum dums too. or let's put it this way, they were made to play that role in this lifetime, because I feel it sometimes, and I don't want to be in that place where I hate to say it, but you start despising some of these people. But you have to remember that they literally cannot see it, because I've
Yeah.
talked to people, and I thought of this because it directly connects to this UBI, the Universal Basic Income, and the social credit score. So I was talking to a guy that he's a musician that I followed for years, and extremely talented guy. I've never met him in person, but seems very nice, you know. And he lives in Canada, and Trudeau was talking about, well, he said, right, he's like, this is a great opportunity to like basically remap the entire of Canadian society. And so they're talking about rolling out the UBI, and this guy was saying like wow, I can't wait for it, you know. And I'm like,
Justin Castro.
do you know, yeah, you're one of them bloodlines, right? So I said, do you know about social credit score and the implications of the UBI? And he said no. So I explained it to him, and in 5 minutes, he basically reverted back to his position. He's like, well, anyway, I can't wait for it. And you're like,
I don't want to live among those monkeys anymore.
right. See, so that's the thing, is like, you know, if I stayed in that position, I hate these MFs, you know. Then you start becoming like that black magician, like, well, F it, you know. Because I've thought about this, Judith. A lot of us, we can see it, and so maybe I should have just been one of these archontic controllers, because if we can see it, and if you can see it, then if you're on the other side, you could run game on these MFs, right? But I'm not gonna do that, because I'm not a piece of shit, you know. But I was thinking about it also, that like deep in myself, although, you know, like my mom was an interior designer, my dad was a teacher, he was an ESL teacher for years, and I always consider myself more of a temple lineage, right? But the fact of the matter is, I do come from a military line. It was just that we had to switch to religious. And I thought about it. I was like, well, no wonder I could see all these things, because I probably have played that role before. But let's say above board in my family line, you're talking about military intelligence, right? And the temples in Japan, for 200 years, the Tokugawa area, you know who the intelligence network was for the country? It was the Buddhist temples, because they were the ones that were educated. And it doesn't have to be nefarious, but, you know, just writing regular reports, that's intelligence, right? You send it back to Tokyo. What's going on in the area, right? They had monks who played the shakuhachi, this long flute. I think they call it, I don't know if it's transverse, but the regular flute sideways. This flute goes like this, right? They used to wear these basket hats with slats in the front so you couldn't see the face. These were spies. They were monks, but they were allowed to wander the country. Most people, you had to stay in the area that you were born in. You know, they wouldn't allow you to really move around too much. So the Buddhist priests were the intelligence agency. So I do have something in my blood where it's like there's some kind of familiarity with, like, of course I can see all this stuff, because you know, my background has played some role in intelligence. But you know, it's pretty plain to see that there's a hard split happening. It's so-called baked in the cake, and no matter how much you would want to show people and have them come to the same realizations that we see, it's not going to happen. And that's kind of an ego thing too. Like, I can educate these people, right? Well, guess what? "Quote unquote," God made them too. Either they have that seed to know or they don't. And you have to accept that, because if you stay in
but some people get out of their slumber, and you never know when, why exactly. And
But that means they have the seed to know. See,
Mhm. Right.
and we can like maybe like, hey, have you looked at this? But
Mhm.
so we can have an effect, but the truth of the matter is you were either born with that seed to know or you weren't.
Mhm.
So there's people in this lifetime, it don't matter what you do, they ain't gonna learn this time around. So I've thought about that a lot, but I grit my teeth sometimes, but I accept that there's a lot of people that, well, that's their choice. And the thing too is like I see this sometimes too. If you try to push it, they can get violent or have a really bad reaction. And
Mhm.
it's like they've made at some deep level that they're not even aware of that they were born not to know. Why are you trying to push me in the other direction?
Mhm.
So with as much information that's out there now, and you don't have any interest in it, that says something. Then you're on that camp over there. So they're the ones that in this time, and it's going to get stronger and stronger as we move forward. Everybody wants to be in the group, or they want to be of the one mind. So
Mhm.
if you really don't want to do the work and you want to take the shortcut, you will become a robot. You will become AI.
Mhm.
And the other side, we can come together as individuals and retain our individuality, but have a kind of a more organic group consciousness. There's going to be both. Yeah, but I mentioned, I don't know how deep to get into it, but and I have no citation for this, but this is a strong feeling I have. It's not going to happen now, but into the future, even the people that are more of the organic mind, if you keep ramping up, I think the quote unquote higher levels, right, of consciousness, you start to become a an archetype almost. Like you start to lose your personal traits. So I don't know. Isn't that also some kind of assimilation program? That's why people can agree or disagree, but the Vedics did say this wheel of samsara. This is hell. Well, the thing is, it get like I think actually a lot of us this year in 2021 in the next couple of years, the moves that the people that have the eyes open, the moves that are made are going to set the trend positively for the next like 20 years,
Mhm.
right? I think at the end of this decade, there's going to be many people with strong careers and businesses that were formed during the chaos, right? But the more that you realize these bigger macro trends and the circle of birth and death, you're like, do we really have to do this again? Like this is getting kind of this is like the hamster wheel of samsara, right? We're going around and around, and even the quote unquote gods, they're delusional because you're still going around on the circle. Like this is hell. This is Groundhog's Day, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, but to be born at this time and be aware of and be in it, it's something,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah,
It's
many
not
want to
boring. It's
be
not boring,
alive
that's for sure.
during this
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I know.
So,
So
hmm.
I've been thinking because our good friend Klaus Schwab, Darth Vader,
Mhm. Yep.
has done a video and he warned about a global cyber attack that
Oh
would
yeah.
bring the entire grid down. And that would then be judged as a real catastrophe, and COVID would only be a minor inconvenience. So, when people like him start talking about things like
Hmm.
that, my ears grow. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is I wouldn't doubt they would do something like that, but
Mhm.
the 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 Aquarian energies, they're just flowing out. We're like in the apocalypse, so
Mhm.
they could try to clamp down, but Aquarius is definitely connected to the technology. So maybe they would try to do Internet 2.0. I don't know, but there will, I think from this point forward, there's always going to be some form of this
Yeah.
technological thing. But the cryptocurrency people, and I am one of them, you better listen to what Judith said.
Exactly. And that is what I wanted to ask you, because
Yeah.
we just had a brief look at this article. So we know that the central banks want to dominate the crypto currencies.
Yeah.
And so that they can program it in a way where they determine where you can spend it.
Oh, they want to blockchain everything down to every calorie. You know, blockchain the basket of strawberries. If they could, they would blockchain every atom. You know.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's going to happen for some people.
Yeah.
But
so my question is, let's speculate. Is it theoretically possible? Let's say they do that. They take the entire grid down. No electricity, no gas pumps, nothing, dark winter. Is it possible that let's say after a while everything goes back to normal, but it goes online again, that they have sacked and wiped out Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, whatever?
I think that they're going to try to float their own currencies. And you know, I've thought about this, and I think that I'm not always right. I do cover Bitcoin on my Patreon. I've been pretty consistent, but I did make a bad call at the end of last year, because in the fall I was saying, you know what, I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin is going to trade sideways or down, and then we'll have the run this spring. Well, I was sure wrong. I came out, you know, after it started really running, and I was like, it's what happened was the institutional funds started buying. So really the average public is not in right now. All the institutional funds, they want to have established positions. So it's really pumped it up to, I think it hit 32,000 today, US dollars.
Yeah.
So it'll pull back because it's going straight vertical right now. But I think they're going to let these cryptos, the general crypto market, run for like a year or two. And then you're going to see a hard push towards some kind of consolidated or official banker coin, or let's say a new digital dollar for US, something like that. Beyond that, I don't know. But I think that people shouldn't be, kind of like my advice for this year, don't be too set on one thing, because I've heard people say, well, I'm going to sit on Bitcoin for 20 years and then I'll be like the ultra millionaire. You sure Bitcoin's going to last? You sure Bitcoin's going to last? First of all, we don't know even who made Bitcoin. It could have been the CIA or something, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there's no certainty of anything. I know this is a thing too, Judith.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who are in it now, they came in like the last 5 years. Okay, especially there was a big run up in 2017. But I know people that, well, I haven't checked their wallet, but they claim to have major. They're what they call the whales. Some of these guys have held Bitcoin since it was like $200 or under, and I'm talking hundreds of Bitcoins. Okay, they're telling me they're about to cash out right now, and we're talking tens of millions of dollars. So it's all perspective, right? For a lot of the average people, they're getting in now, but there's people that were invested way back. That the thing is that the more it goes up, the harder it is to monetize that, right? How are you going to pull out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars, $100 million? It becomes actually more problematic the more it goes up. So some of these guys, they're smart pulling out now because they've already made the gains, you know? I mean, for me, past 10 million, how much is enough is enough? How much is a couple million? I would take that, you know? So it's all perspective, but I think this crypto market will probably, I think it's going to be eye-watering and eye-popping what happens this year, but it's also relative because, say, a loaf of bread is like $2 or €2 or something, and then it goes to like €10 or $10, right? Well, your crypto and the paper money terms went up a lot, but then the cost of things went up a lot. So it's all relative. But I think it'll go up the next year or two. But beyond that, you better have some exit strategy. I think greed is a killer. So if it goes up a certain amount, maybe take a portion out, because same thing happened 20 years ago in that tech bubble. There was a lot of these tech guys that got all the stocks, and they were millionaires on paper. But then when that bubble popped, there was all unrealized gains, right?
So I was just thinking along those lines. If we would see if that happens, but if they take the grid down, it will be probably blamed on Iran, Russia, China, whatever. It doesn't matter, because we will not be listening anyhow, because there is no electricity. And but I was thinking, are they going to sanitize the internet? Let's say
it's already happening.
Yeah, I know. But let's say your website is gone after.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, see, these people are extreme 3D thinkers, although they have been and have always been also in the multidimensional. It's just that the more archontic you are, you're like dead inside, and you can't really influence the scalar field, and or you can't, like, quote unquote manifest. Can't manifest as well when you're a vampire. So guess what, Judith? Okay, you wiped everything out, but I can still pull from here. In fact, the age we're going into, people will just know things. The veil, that kind of veil is dropping, and I've seen it in the past. I've talked about the things going on in my community, Japanese American community. I've lived them. I grew up around these people as a baby, as a toddler, as a teenager, and it's only in the last 5 years I started to see things that were always there. What's that? Informationally, I could look at some data points and things like that, but I just started. It's like little. My eyes are like, oh, these people are MK Ultra, or they're evil or something. That was more than just a book realization. That was a spiritual revelation.
So do you think that when, let's say, and this will happen one way or another, I'm pretty sure about that the economy will collapse further?
That's for sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, I bet my head on that, and I'm pretty sure I will not lose it. So do you think that when we have reached that stage, that it will yank more and more people into reality and out of their prescribed mindset?
I don't think so. I think it says maybe some, but I think a lot of people will just go on the UBI. Like I said, it's baked in the cake at this point. So the people that are inclined one way or another, you're just going to see the trends. I think that it's already preset, the outcome, and we just have to play out the timeline. I've said this before. It's like, one good thing is everything is on the table. You know exactly where people are, right? You know who the maskers are, and you know how the people that watch Judith Quoba's Night Flight, we know where they are. So, it's like, in that way, we know who everybody is. So, but I have another talk coming, because I think it's
and it has gone so fast. When do you have that appointment?
Like basically right now. He didn't send me the link
yet. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, because I booked things too close, but I would say this, Judith. You know what? We can't complain, because if you're in our area, we have more than enough to work with. So it's more based on people's self-confidence. Have you done your own self-work? And we're never perfect, but I could tell you, and you might have seen me crying on another show. It was kind of emotional the last couple of weeks. We are on the cusp of a whole new phase for us. This is our year zero, Judith. This is our reset. So if you're ready, I think that we've come to a point where it's for us to do the positive thing and actually I think you're going to see people starting whole new careers, new lives, and these kind of things. And it's partially because of this reset that's happening, but also we're ready for it. And I think a lot of us, it's disturbing to see a lot of things that are happening, but at the same time, we're not in the shaken to the bone with fear that half the population is in. So in that way, let's make 2021 a good year
Money
for
and
us.
fear. I've never known what that is.
Right? It's a funny thing. The people that have the money, they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of people with the ideas, it's like, we could use a little more money. So, but anyway, thanks, Judith. And
Yeah.
thanks, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Until next time, this was Night Flight with the wonderful Masaki Miyagawa. And stay safe and sound out there. Bye bye.